back on CSBK TV once more, and we are at the 5th round of the Canadian Superbike Championships for 2011 by Parts Canada. We wanted to take a couple of minutes today to acknowledge an old friend that we lost this past week, a fellow from the United States of America. He was AMA Dirt Track Champion in 1967, a well-loved rider. Colin, we lost Gary Nixon.
Gary was a great guy, and certainly someone who not only was successful but made an incredible impression on everyone he ever met. If you ran into Gary Nixon, you would certainly remember it the rest of your life.
Well, I had a chance to interact with Gary, of course, when when he and Jay Springsteen formed that Para-9s racing team and ran in the Moto ST Endurance Series in the United States of America for 3 seasons, and were very successful at it. And a colorful character indeed. I shared with him the thoughts that when I was dirt track racing, I always wanted to ride a Triumph, but it had to be a Nixon Triumph, and I couldn't get one. I had to settle for Larry Pomfren's old bike. Nixon got quite a laugh out of that.
Well, Gary Nixon, most importantly for most people, he was in the movie On Any Sunday, and of course that is a career-defining thing if you happen to be in that motion picture, and for a lot of us we saw that at a formative age, me included, and made a big impression. But Gary bridged from the best days of British bike racing, so mid to late 60s, into the heyday of the Japanese factory bikes when all the really trick equipment was in AMA racing, where you had to compete in 5 disciplines to actually win the championship, which is, when you think it, basically it's running the gamut of every type of motorcycle competition. It was really something to win the #1 plate back in that era.
Yeah, and I searched your archives a little earlier on when you shared with us the fact that Nixon did race here in Canada.
Well, way back in the day, in the 70s, there were appearance money races. That was what would happen to a non-championship event to try and lure some names, and most part of Victoria, I believe it was in 77. Gene Romero was there, who was a very famous flat tracker. Gary Nixon was there on Irv Kanemoto's TZ750. Now, Irv Kanemoto and Gary Nixon had just missed winning the FIM Formula 750 championship for Kawasaki the year before. Very controversial.
Yeah, some would say he actually won it. But
strange politics, and a round got cancelled months after it had actually taken place. But Gary was there on Irv Kanemoto's bike, and that's actually the bike that Freddie Spencer would later become famous on when Nixon did retire.
Right. Interesting to note as well, we mentioned that Para-9s racing team, the fact that Nixon, of course, wore the number 9, and to me, he'll always be the number 9. Springsteen inherited that from him, and then I think it was passed on to Danny Eslick, who was also cut from the same mold that I've had.
Well, there are 3 guys who like to have fun, and you see it in their riding, and I think that when you're a fan, anytime a guy shows his personality on the bike and is really aggressive, as those 3 guys you mentioned, and Eslick certainly is a modern-day version of that kind of attitude, and Gary's, would probably be proud that we're mentioning Eslick in the same sentence. And my experience with Eslick is he's a fair competitor. He's very aggressive. He gets in trouble sometimes, but he's really a sportsman. But more than anything, he wants to win that motorcycle race.
Gary Nixon is going to be missed, of course, as you mentioned, Colin. He bridged that gap. He rode for the Drive Factory team. He rode for the Kawasaki team. Actually, at the same time that Yvon Dumel was competing for Kawasaki, Gary Nixon was a teammate of that.
Well, in a factory Suzuki rider, he actually did the development for the RG Square 4 series, but he didn't get to reap the reward. That was actually a friend of his, Barry Sheen, who became famous on the Square 4, and the reason was Gary Nixon almost died testing it in Japan, and in fact one of the other riders of that era, who was a factory Suzuki test rider, died the same day that Nixon wound up getting hurt and basically missing a season of action, which was the first debut season of the RG, and Barry Sheen was the guy who took over the program.
We've lost a huge piece of history.
Yeah, and Gary was a great guy, and I think a lot of people are talking about a lot of the younger guys, people like Ben Bostrom, who really looked up to him. And of course, if it weren't for On Any Sunday, people wouldn't know about Gary in his heyday. So it's fun that we have that movie to look back on.
Right, so I think it's a real highlight of my career to have met him, to have had a chance to speak with him and interview him, what have you. And it was really cool. We're going to miss you, Gary.
Larger than life.
To all our friends at AMA Pro Racing, our thoughts.